the Virginia DMME Winter Safety Alert. I'm Mine Chief Randy Moore. I'm out here today with Greg Philbeck, and he's showing us the proper way to do a pre-op equipment check on a 993 Cat K loader.
One of the first things that we do is make sure that all the steps are on it, nothing's bent, no bolts are out. The grab rails is intact. And then we come to this part right here underneath. We squat down and we check and see if there's any fluid leaking out. Make sure all the belly pans is up. Check and see if there's any oil on rear ends. Check the insides of each tire. I can see that tire over there on this side, and then when I go around I'll see this one. And then we'll check the tires for cuts or whatever. And inside here there's a ring of bolts that hold this wheel on. We make sure nothing's shiny. That indicates that there's nuts loose. So we make sure that's proper. And then we look back in this little cubby hole right here to make sure there's nothing leaking out of it. Make sure all of our caps are on the fire suppressant system, and make sure there's no cracks in the frame or anything like that. We check these steps here, make sure they're all intact in case you have to exit that way. And then we come into the center of the machine and step in here and check back to the back to check for leaks. Make sure all the hoses are intact, nothing's sweating, showing any kind of leakage. The drive lines, we check and make sure that all the bolts are in the drive lines, nothing laying on the frame. Look down in here and check the boom pins, make sure that they're all okay. These center pins, make sure all the bolts are on them, bottom and the top. And then squat down here and look at that inside tire over there and check the front end of the piece of equipment. Make sure there's nothing leaking there. Make sure all the bolts is not showing any kind of wear or loose or anything like that. And we check these chains, make sure these links, there's nothing broke on the links. Make sure they're pretty well centered with the tar itself. Then we do the same thing on the bolts inside of this rim. Make sure nothing's shiny or it's showing any kind of thing that's loose. And then we check the front axle from this angle. Make sure there's no cracks, stress cracks or anything like that. Make sure the bolts is all in place, nothing missing. Make sure there's no cracks on the boom itself. And we check the bucket. Make sure there's nothing slipping here, any kind of pins. The bottom pin, check and make sure all the bolts are in it. You check the back of the buckets for any kind of stress cracks. Then we come up to the business end and check and make sure that all your teeth and shanks are on. Check, make sure there's no cracks in the bucket, nothing peeling up. Then we walk around on this side and basically do the same thing. Make sure all the bolts is in place. Check for cracks. The boom, check, make sure there's no cracks in it. Check the chain and the tars from this angle. Make sure there's no cuts or no kind of fluid dripping out. And everything looks good right there. We can check a different angle to that tar on that side over there. Make sure all them bolts is in. Come in the center here. While you're in here, you check your transmission level. That's fluid level there. You get to see this side of the drive line. Make sure all your bolts is in it. Center pin bolts are all intact on it, top and bottom. Glance at the hoses, make sure nothing's weeping, no oil coming out. And you check your steps on this off side, your grab rails, your fire suppressant system, it's all intact. We've got a calf, what they call a calf system, that hooks up to our fire truck, and it puts foam directly into this. Make sure that cap's on. Make sure this canister is all right, no hoses off of it or anything like that. We always do a 3-point contact when approaching, getting up on any machine. Make sure you do that, a 3-point contact. This is the engine compartments where you check your engine oil. We got a dipstick right here. We have a light that illuminates this of a morning that you flip on. Pull your dipstick out, check and make sure there's sufficient amount of oil on it. Make sure that there's nothing amiss in here. All the caps are on this fire suppressant. There's 2 gauges here that we check. That's for your coolant. And then we got one right here for your hydraulic. Make sure the proper amount of fluids in each one of them. When you come up, we got a fire extinguisher here. Have to make sure that it's in the green. You got to make sure this is on it, and make sure the tag is updated. Quick check with the windshield wipers. Make sure the blades is on there good. Do a quick look to make sure that no glass is broken. Your side mirrors are in place. Lights, all okay. Got 3 windshield wipers out front. Make sure that they're all the blades is on them. This is the operator's compartment. There's a few things we check in here before we fill out a card of the morning. First thing we do is turn the key on. Make sure your computer comes on. Make sure all your gauges are properly working.
Brakes and lights should also be checked before beginning work. Test your brakes before moving to the active mine site. Have a co-worker make sure your lights are working.
That's not your load light, so
And remember to check these things before getting your day started. Cab air filters, door seals, the air conditioning and heating system, the turbo oil line, and your fire suppression system.